you've written two books about academia, and here's the cool thing. I I agree, I think, with every bit of your argument in those books against academia, your critiques of academia. But what's amazing is that I don't think there was any overlap at all. I'll have to check that again, but I don't think there's any overlap at all with my critiques of academia, which
Mhm.
are numerous. So what I want to do is let's just go back and forth and trash academia. You give one reason it sucks, and then I'll give another reason it sucks. And then if you want to defend it, feel free. But do you want to start with kind of your overarching argument in regards to academia?
Yeah. So the book I wrote with this guy named Phil Magnus, who's a history PhD, and
Right.
he and I in the book Cracks in the Ivory Tower say our fundamental tool that we're going to use to sort of analyze what's going wrong with academia is to look at perverse incentives. When you have academia might stand for something, it might have certain goals, universities might have certain goals, but people are people, they're imperfect, they're often selfish. And when you create hierarchies and you create distributions of power, distribution of resources, and so on, you give people perverse incentives where I can help myself or my subunit at the expense of everyone else. Unsurprisingly, people frequently take the bait. So basically, the book is it's not saying everything in academia is caused by that, by the way, but we're saying like this problem exists. We can document it. We can illustrate the incentives. And now let's look at some of the bad stuff they do and see how it's explained by this. So, for instance, one of the chapters is about general education requirements. This requirement in many universities that you take a wide range of courses. Now, there are some universities who I think do their Common Core well. Columbia, I suspect, is one of them.
Famously.
Chicago, which is the school I wanted to go to as an undergraduate, I was admitted, but my parents wouldn't pay for it, so I had to go elsewhere.
Hmm.
I think they do a good job. St. John's, I think, does probably a good job.
Very,
But
very famous. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but in part also because the students who go there sign up for that and want
Right.
it, and then because
Sure.
they want it, they learn from it.
Right.
But in general, general education requirements do not succeed in their stated purpose. They don't teach people foreign languages. They don't make them better writers. They don't teach them critical thinking skills. They don't create general mathematical or scientific literacy. We document some of the evidence for that in the book. It's been tested pretty heavily.
Hmm.
If it's there, we can't find it, and lots of people are trying to find it. However, the thing that we note is the thing that has the best explanatory power for why at a typical university you have to take a class in something that's not something you're majoring in is the financial need of the department that the class is housed in. The reason for that in most universities and colleges, the department in question gets money per student. Every butt they have in a seat, they get some cash, which pays for salaries and research budgets and so on. So what they do is what you might expect. If you have a financially needy department, they heavily lobby the general education requirement people, the deans and others, to mandate courses in that thing. They nominally say that it's in the public interest. We're helping students. And then that's what you're forced to take. And then if the classes don't work, the perverse thing is when the classes don't work, freshman composition courses do not work. They do not make people better writers
Hmm.
99% of the time.
Right.
When they don't work, you can then go to the dean and say, well, one class didn't do it. We need to make them take two or three.
Right.
So what we find are things like the Department of Economics in most schools is financially very well off, and the faculty that work there could easily get a six-figure job doing something else if they lost their job in the academy. There's loss of research funding. They have a really high student to faculty ratio, a really low faculty to student ratio. They generally are not required to take their courses, whereas English departments have a terrible job market. The ratio of like PhDs seeking tenure track jobs is incredibly high. The
Hmm.
ratio of the total number of full-time faculty in English has been going up dramatically, but the number of students majoring in it has been going down dramatically. They're
Hmm.
financially really needy, and they're the ones that have the massive presence on gen ed requirements. So why do you have to take this class? Not because it's the university will say it's good for you. The actual reason is because it's good for the faculty that it's good for the department at which you take the class.
Okay. I think that's right. But I think there's something deeper going on. I think that if you were to present that to your typical English professor who teaches obscure poetry from whatever, whatever country in whatever century, right, that no one
Mhm.
cares about, basically. Um, they would say, "Oh yeah, we force students to take these courses, and we deserve money for teaching those courses. We deserve what you're describing as sort of a crooked system that's actually justified, and it's just," they would say, wouldn't they? Because we know that this poetry is important for people to know, and the problem with people in general and Americans in particular is that they're so dumb they don't even know what's good for them, but we do. So we are a priesthood. They won't say this part, but they will use other words for it. They start talking as if they're a priesthood. Same thing, right? The unwashed masses, they just won't ever read Dostoevsky unless we make them do it. And we know that reading Dostoevsky is great. It's what a good person has in their arsenal, right? So it's a cultural thing, I think, underlying this whole structure, isn't it? Do you agree with that?
The reason I worry about that is if it's take like just like the argument like, well, businesses are greedy, that's why they behave badly. The
Okay.
problem you have is, okay, well, why is it these businesses behave worse than those businesses? If you can show me that it turns out that those ones are greedier than the other ones, then we're starting to find like, differences explain differences. We want them to go along.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of priesthood attitude, I think, applies to almost every single department. The people who get a PhD in X tend to think X is really important and more people should care about it. And when you actually go and survey faculty and say like, do you think people should take they're like, yeah, my classes are important. You should drop your economics courses and take sociology. No, you should drop your sociology courses and take geography.
Right.
This attitude of our stuff is really important and people wouldn't take it if we didn't make them. It's very common. It's not special to the English department.
Mm-hmm.
But so we don't find, I don't find like, sort of like a difference in these attitudes enough to explain the difference in the actual courses. But what does correlate really well is, if a department is really financially needy, you tend to be forced to take lots of classes in them, even though they also have they have the attitude you said. But then you go over to this department, they also have the attitude that you said, but they're not financially needy and they don't try to force people to take classes. The thing that actually gets them from, in a way, it's almost like you're giving them too much credit because they're not that altruistic. This whole attitude of like, everyone should know what I know. Cool. Would you teach it to them for free? Well, no. Would you teach it to them if it cost you something? No. What actually puts a fire under your ass to force those people to learn this thing that you think you ought to know? I need the money. That's what seems to do it. So, okay. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, neither one
and
of
also, us. And also the classes that they take in these English departments, they're not like comp classes are typically taught by adjunct faculty, often who just have a master's degree, and they don't teach great works of literature. And I don't mean great works of literature according to the Western canon. I mean, even if you, the listener, come up with your own list of what you think really are like the great works of literature, they're not doing that. And surprisingly, what we find is they're often very commonly what's happening in the comp classes is you read a bunch of like pop left-wing economics. I wouldn't even call them economics books because they're not economics books, but books about the economy from like a left-wing point of view, written by popular figures and popular press things. So if anything, it ends up being a bully pulpit for, instead of teaching literature and rhetoric and the things that English PhDs specialize in, for teaching the stuff that I do, right, that they don't have any specialty in. And it's taught by adjuncts rather than the main faculty. The main faculty are like, because of these mandatory classes, they don't see more students. They pass off. They basically create a system in which you have a low-paid adjunct teach the class, and then almost all the money goes to the department to go to tenure track faculty to do the stuff that they do, and they teach classes with 7 people.
Right.